Okay. So I've turned off the voice, so just so that folks know, we are now recording, and it's just me on the screen. And so welcome to anyone that's joining us and on the YouTube channel. And thank you so much for those of you here on Zoom that managed to find the link in your spam folders and all the different places it goes. I was sharing with folks here on the call that sometimes it just takes me a while to really land on what I want to share in these evening practices. And tonight it wasn't landing, and I felt so good just to drop trying to figure it out. And I wonder if it might be like that for some of us when, especially maybe the more time you spend on the path, you learn about a lot of different ways in, a lot of different practices. There's so many ways to practice mindfulness, to practice in this insight vipassana. There's many, many practices. And sometimes that can cause more doubt. It's like, oh, what should I do now? What do I need now? Should I do this? And we start some body scan, and then we're like, oh, I can't pay attention. And then we jump to something else. And then, oh, I'm feeling harsh on myself. Maybe I'll throw in some metta phrases, and it just gets very conditions more unsettledness. And so when in doubt, default is always mindfulness of body. It's the first foundation of mindfulness, and it's the practice that is most there's many variations of mindfulness of body, but basically mindfulness of body is the default when there's doubt. That's something that I've learned, and sometimes I still forget. And so the primary practice, the most important practice, I would say, in the first foundation of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of body, is mindfulness of breathing. There's several other contemplations in mindfulness of body, but the breath is the primary primary resting place, the primary steadiness for developing mindfulness. And there's this, which I will, do I still have it? Yes. This is in the follow a thought, access to insight. There it is, access to insight website. Venerable Aryadhamma says this about this Anapanasati Sutta. Is the Anapana means in and out breath. Sati means remembering or mindfulness. So this is the in and out breath mindfulness sutta or teaching. And so Venerable Aryadhamma says this Anapanasati, the meditation on in and out breathing, is the first subject of meditation expounded by the Buddha, also in the Mahasatipatthana, the greater discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. The Buddha laid special stress on this meditation, for it's the gateway to enlightenment. That's pretty good. and the gateway to Nabana, or Nirvana, if in Sanskrit. So meaning it's the way, it's one of the primary ways, path to freedom from suffering and to liberation. So he says, this teacher says, I didn't mean to assume it was a he. This teacher says, it is the gateway to enlightenment and Nabana, adopted by all the Buddhas of the past as the very basis for their attainment of Buddhahood. So all the Buddhas of the past, the word Buddha is an honorific title meaning enlightened one. We speak about the Buddha, meaning this being Siddhartha Gautama, that is usually who we're referring to, but it's considered that there's many other Buddhas as well. And he took up this Anapanasati, in breath, out breath, mindfulness, as the subject of his meditation. On the basis of this, he attained the 4 states of concentration called jhanas. He recalled his previous lives. He understood the nature of samsara, the round of re-becoming, and all the great insights and knowledges that gave rise to him becoming fully enlightened were from this practice. So I'd say that's good enough for me, and hopefully for you. Yeah. So there's 4 what are called tetrads, 4 groupings of practices and contemplations in this Anapanasati Sutta. And we're just going to talk about the first tetrad tonight, and we're mostly going to practice with it. So this means there's 4 lines in this first grouping of mindfulness of breathing. I don't think I really want to say more about it. I mostly want to practice it, and I'll give a little bit of instruction or guidance or pointers in the practice. And may it be so. I hope to mostly have nice chunks of silence so that you can watch the mind moving away from the breath and returning to the breath. The point of the practice is not to stay on the breath and wrestle with it like, oh no, I did it again. My mind has gone into thinking about dessert. It's actually just to notice, oh, thinking about dessert, and beginning again. That's the practice. So I'll give some little reminders. And I was pointing out to folks, I'll put the link to this book down below in the YouTube video as well, but the book Breath by Breath by Larry Rosenberg. I highly recommend this book, which is all about the Anapanasati Sutta. All right, enough said. So I think I might turn off the overhead because it looks really bright in here. So I'm just going to dim my lights. You might like to do the same or not. And any supports you need so that you can be comfortable and upright. You can practice this meditation laying down if you're having a lot of pain in a seated posture. It is not helpful to begin your posture with a lot of striving. Definitely not. I should have had all that set up beforehand. So getting the supports that you need. We want, if we're sitting upright, a helpful cue that I've been working with lately, that I heard from Christina Barre, is to rest back and down. So for me, that kind of, I noticed that I have a pretty perpetual leaning forward from my tendency towards exuberance. And so it's helpful for me to remind myself to rest back into the spine and down into the pelvis. And then we begin the practice just by soft brush stroke of attention down the body, letting go of any tension that isn't needed. So the face becomes peaceful. The jaw and shoulder bones heavy. Can be helpful to have the elbows resting back under the shoulders to help us with that resting back and down. All the way into relaxed hands. And seeing if there's any softening that is needed or helpful in the area of the center of the chest, inner layers of the belly. So that as the inner subtle chronic holding of the belly softens a little bit or a lot, then we may start to feel more grounded and present, rooted, earthing. The first foundation of mindfulness begins with the body. And the first practice in the foundation of the body is mindfulness of breathing. The breath is the meeting place of mind and body. And so as we have settled into our posture, into our stillness, at some point attention will meet the breath. Breath is already happening. Some of us may have already cultivated a resting place of attention with breath. And if you're new to the practice, just see where it feels most comfortable for you, most accessible. Some feel the expanding and contracting of the belly. Others might feel the rise and fall of the chest. And some may practice with the sensation of breath at the nostrils, coming in and out. And so for the remainder of this practice, just choose one of those places, belly, chest, or nostril, that feels most accessible, most comfortable for you to abide, to rest. And then we begin with this first part of the contemplation. While breathing in long, one knows I breathe in long. And while breathing out long, one knows I breathe out long. So this means to really begin paying attention to each breath. Sometimes the inhale is longer than the exhale. And sometimes the exhale is longer than the inhale. And similarly, while breathing in short, one knows I breathe in short. And while breathing out short, one knows I breathe out short. So this isn't saying that any kind of breath is better than another. It's pointing us to just knowing how is each breath. These two contemplations are really pointing to more than just long and short. They're talking about all the qualities of the breath and the subtle nuances in it. Sometimes the breath is very fine and smooth, coming and going freely and easily. And sometimes it's rough, like burlap, pushed and pulled in and out. Sometimes it feels very subtle or deep, almost so still that we don't notice it. And other times so short and pinched, hurried and stressed or agitated, that it can feel quite uncomfortable. You may be noticing that there's a commentary happening with your breath, a narrator describing it. That's okay. And just see if it can just be a little more in the background and the actual felt experience more in the foreground. As if awareness is a big soft brush that's following each breath and just seeing, it's like this. It's like this. The mind conditions the breath, and the breath conditions the mind. But if we try to control it to get it to be some way, it doesn't work. Rather, we just meet how it is fully right now, breath by breath. First, we may be making quite an effort to stay with the breath or to rest with the breath. And then the invitation here is to lighten that up So that attention is like a feather that floats onto the wave of the breath and just rests, breath by breath, like a feather. It's natural that at times a gust of thought or energy or sensation or sound will lift the feather off the breath. And when we notice, that's a moment of strong awareness and mindfulness. And the feather of awareness floats back to rest on the breath, with the breath. And now the third contemplation. One trains oneself. Sensitive to the whole body, I breathe in. Sensitive to the whole body, I breathe out. And the wording has changed here to one trains oneself. There's an intention to still rest aware of each breath. And then just widen the attention a little bit. So whole body here in this posture is breathing. Sensitive to the whole body, I breathe in. Sensitive to the whole body, I breathe out. The body, the mind, and the breath all together. Just breathing. And if we notice our attention is really dropping off, there's a lot of sleepiness or drowsiness, we might need to come back to breathing in long, aware, breathing in long. A little bit energizing to pay attention there to longer inhales. One trains oneself, sensitive to the whole body, I breathe in. Sensitive to the whole body, I breathe out. And now the fourth, contemplation. One trains oneself, calming the whole body, I breathe in. Calming the whole body, I breathe out. In a few moments, when I ring the bell 3 times, see if you can stay resting with the breath and see how the breath may be conditioned by sound or by the thought of practice ending, etc. When you hear the end of the third sound, gently transitioning from this practice, but perhaps continuing attention with the breath. Another 25 minutes of that would be nice. So for those of you that are new to practice, that was a 25-minute practice tonight, and actually it was a bit, was it 10, 20? Yeah, 25, yeah. Yeah. And some of us may have noticed, especially if you're new to the practice, that you may be having thoughts like, I'm no good at this, or I can't pay attention to even one breath, or my mind is so restless, or so sleepy, or whatever, all the versions of it. And here in the Larry Rosenberg says in Breath by Breath, the constant repetition of coming back to the breath has real value. Our wish always to hit the target, always be doing it right, is an obstacle. We start to blame ourselves. I don't know how to do this. I'm a bad meditator. Everybody else is concentrating but me, as if we know. If only my mind didn't wander, I'd be able to practice. And he says, but seeing that the mind has wandered is the practice. If you continue for years, you'll have to come back, who knows, millions of times. So learning to come back gracefully is extremely important. Make it a dance, not a wrestling match. And yeah, so just want to normalize that for all of us. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, I'll also put a link down below for the New Year's retreat that's coming up, and a link to this this wonderful book. So thank you for tuning in and practicing with us in community whenever you do.